Hey folks, it's Bear Gardner, and it is expansion time. So, we've had the announcement for the new Naval Warfare Expansion for Cards, and today we're going to be taking a look at the rotation list, which has just been released like a day ago, a couple of days ago. Hard to tell at the moment, keeping track of things in life and this thing, but I always like to give my opinions when I can get a chance to do so. So, we're going to break down the rotations and talk a little bit about the cards that are going. As ever, I'm a Kards Content Creator. You can find all my stuff down there. Like, subscribe, follow. If you can support the channel, support the channel. Join the Discord. At me in the comments, all that sort of thing if you want to chat about stuff. And I'm not going to make this overly long because we've got quite a bit to dig into, so we're just going to go straight to it. But first of all, what is rotation? Because I do this because my content is often focused on newer players. So whenever we get a patch or like a big update, like an expansion in cards, we also usually get a rotation. So rotation is a number of cards leave the game, and a number of other cards are brought back into the game from rotation. So it's a continuous cycle. So cards, unlike some games, doesn't remove generally cards permanently. They go into what's called the reserve pool, which can still be played in classic mode. You can do that in your game client. You can, when you select a game, if you have a deck that includes rotated or cards that aren't in the main game, it'll give you the option to play in classic. Queue times may be a bit longer, but there are players who do play classic games. But that's the only place that you can play with those cards. Otherwise, they're not available for your decks. And often when cards come back, they have text changes or function changes, so it gives the chance to take a card away and then rework it. Anyway, so that's how rotations work, and so we'll see some cards leaving and some cards returning to the game, and that's what the article will talk about. So I'm just going to break down the article. I'm very busy at the moment. Life is complicated. I'm going through a lot of difficult stuff with life, relationship, and health stuff at the moment, so I don't have quite the time that I usually do for my level of video editing. So you'll have to forgive this one being a little more rough and ready than usual. So we're going to hop to just a browser window and go through the rotation article and talk about kind of how I feel about some of the cards and things that might be relevant about them. So let's hop over. Okay, so as we land, we are here. We have in front of us the article for the rotation list for Naval Warfare. We get the usual blurb talking about it coming on June the 18th. So we get new expansion and obviously rotations. Now they do say here, and it is quite important to note this because this is going to be relevant as we're talking. We do have this sentence, which is a very, very relevant one, which is some of the rotating cards are staples of the current meta and their move to reserves will impact many popular decks. This is very true of this expansion. There are certain cards that are being adjusted or rotated out in this expansion, rather, that perhaps people will be surprised by, and certainly are cards that maybe people thought were never going to be in this position. But we'll get to that in a minute. So anyway, now take a look at the nations and go. So we'll start with returning cards. So we'll just scroll down and take a look at the cards that are coming back. So returning for Britain at first, we have the Sunderland Mark V. So this is big heavy bomber that is an elite and allows you to draw a card at the start of your turn. I don't know that this card is going to be massively popular because it is very expensive and very slow with its op cost of 2 for the effect that it has, and Britain already has draw tools. There is some impact from the rotation on that which we'll hit later, but I don't necessarily see this being a massive deal for Britain. Next up for Britain, we've got Fog of War. So Fog of War is a special, and it is remove target unit from the battlefield, put 2 copies on top of the owner's deck. So obviously there's room for some jankery with this, because this allows you to make additional copies of units that you couldn't normally make copies of, but at 4 cost it is quite an expensive way of doing it. Are we going to see this tried? I would imagine so, because there's just something there's always something cool about playing around with the idea of trying to dupe cards and removing a target unit from the battlefield to get 2 extra copies that you know are going to be... The key is that you know these are going to be your next 2 draws, which is a thing. Knowing that you're going to get them is definitely a thing. But I don't know. Is it really going to do anything amazing? I mean, obviously there are some things that you could get some very, very good cards and 2 extra copies of it, but 4 is quite slow to do that. I'm interested to see whether anyone does anything interesting with it. But I don't know whether they'll be massively successful. I think we will see it in some meme decks. I certainly look forward to trying to play around with a few things. But we'll see. Blockade. So this is another order coming back. And this one allows you to deal 1 damage to any target. So the key is you can target HQ with this. And then units in the enemy's hand cost 1 more, and obviously it stacks. So for 3 cost, you can deal a point of damage to a target and increase the cost of all units in your opponent's hand. It's a limited card. At 3 cost, it might be a little expensive to see heavy use, but it's certainly not an impossible card to find a use case for, because it can slow your opponent down. It is another good delay tool with a little bit of damage. The fact that you can plink HQ with it means, I suppose, if you were ever going to try and do something Britain burn, you might do this. And obviously the art is cool. It's a nice piece of naval art, which, given naval warfare, seeing it come back is kind of cool. True also for the Sunderland, which of course a naval functional aircraft. And then you have Grounded. Now, Grounded coming back is interesting, because Grounded is a really, really irritating delaying tool. So, the upside of Grounded coming back is it does add... Again, we are adding to the delaying tools for slower Britain decks, which is a thing. Britain is often used in this. So, this can be really, really potent. Particularly against units that have gained some kind of bonus from being on the board. Obviously, as a standard card, you can run a fair chunk of them, but it is at 5, it's very expensive, but it can be very good for slowing your opponent down. Again, if you're playing a deck that wants to delay your opponent to do something, this is a pretty decent card. I think the cost might be prohibitive, but I don't necessarily think that we're not going to see it used. I have a feeling we will see this card run, particularly in, say, some control decks. Off the top of my head, I am thinking this probably could find a place in Sove Britain control, just for the advantage of this card, obviously, is tempo. Being able to out-tempo your opponent by causing them to have to put back something that they've put a lot of effort into. A great example of this would obviously be the guards, the Soviet guards, the 9/9, if they've just deployed it at 0 cost and then you pay 5 to make their next draw effectively dead because they're just getting the same card back, and it will of course reset its cost, so you would have to draw 9 cards again for it to go down to 0. So it can be a strong tempo tool, so I think we'll certainly see some people playing around with it. Speaking of cards we're going to see people playing around with, Kriegsmarine is back. And I honestly don't know how I feel about it, which is unsurprising to most people who know my opinion on this sort of thing. J King and I did a video where we talked a little bit about Kriegsmarine. So, Kriegsmarine is hypothetically quite good. It's a strong card in theory, because what it says, for those who are audio listening, so remember we do have those, is a 7 cost order, and it's an elite, and it says deal damage to enemy HQ equal to cards in the enemy's hand, then the enemy discards a card. So hypothetically this could be 7k, deal 9 damage and force a discard. hypothetically, and in fact that is kind of somewhere in that region is your ideal use case for this. But, and it is a big but, the issue with this is that we don't necessarily have the same level of forced card. So the key here is that this was extremely good any time that you can cause your opponent to have lots of extra cards in deck. In particular, France Ally would allow you to stack out your opponent's deck, and then you could just use this to deal damage by forcing an overdraw. With, you could hypothetically, Phony War would make this 12k in effect, because 5 for Phony War, and this would then be 12k, force 8 draw up to 8, so you're doing 8 damage and discarding a card. But spoilers, Phony War is leaving us. Get to that later. So, is this still a good card? Yeah, definitely. This card is still really quite strong as an elite, and it is direct damage to HQ, so definitely look forward to seeing people play around with this. Very much like Bismarck, it's going to make an appearance. I think there are going to be some people who are going to try using this in discard, and I think they're going to regret the choice. I will point out this is kind of counter-synergistic, because if you are using the discard package to force your opponent to discard cards, you are devaluing Kriegsmarine. And you definitely don't want to pay 7k, deal 2 damage to your opponent, and discard a card. Unless it's winning you the game. Which it might be, but realistically, definitely expect to see this back and played. It is a very strong card. It also has an extremely cool piece of art. We also have the FW200 Condor coming back, so this is a special Blitz bomber. It's 3 cost, it's 3/3, it has Blitz, and it's 2 op cost, which on the face of it is incredibly strong, but it comes with cannot attack the enemy HQ this turn. So you can drop it and take out a unit, but it can't go straight to face, so welcome to situational. Will it see some play? Probably, if you haven't got anything else that you want to put in it, or if you're trying to run a German air deck, you might throw this in. And it's not a bad body, but I think it's going to get outvalued. That said, if it sticks around, 3/3 bombers, and I've said this before, are really quite good. 3 damage bomber is fairly scary. So it's a decent card, but 2 op cost is not great. And the limitation to HQ prevents it from being used as pure direct damage, but it's in effect like a 5k removal card, which is not terrible. So 5k for 3 damage is not awful. So again, any burn deck doesn't necessarily mind this if it's got 5k. Could be a good finisher because it is a bomber. Next up we have U16, it's a new German countermeasure. I'm sure everybody's going to be delighted to see this being added to the pool that you can get when you play out your... as where disabilities and memories are an issue, German infantry, I'm gonna have to go and look it up. Which is frankly terrifying. But that's okay. You can all bear with me. Aufklärung. Guess what? Brain injuries and disabilities mean I have memory issues. Yeah, everyone's going to love seeing this added to the Aufklärung pool. So this is a limited card, 1 cost countermeasure, and it says when the enemy gives an order, the enemy discards a random card. This is great in a discard deck. So we're going to see yet more discard support. I've been on record as saying I'm not the biggest fan of this. Also, this is just, as I say, this is not a bad pull at all from Aufklärung if you see it. Because it is 1 cost for a pretty strong effect, and there are a lot of orders out there. There are not many unit-only decks, so this thing could be pretty devastating, and it definitely fits the Naval Warfare theme. Next up, we've got Rout. So this is Destroy Target is standard card, I should say, 2 cost order. Destroy target unit with cost 1 or less, gain a credit for 2. This is so good. This is a really good piece of early German removal against aggro decks, and is definitely going to find its way into some decks. How good it becomes will very much depend on whether you see this kind of being. It's going to depend a lot on the meta. Like, the way the meta settles will depend on how good this is. If Japan or similar light aggro decks with a lot of 1 defense units become a thing and continue being a thing for aggression, this is a good card. Gaining a credit slot is the other thing. I mean, this is in effect War Machine but with a bonus. I should be clear about this. I mean, it is... So, the War Machine is also standard card. It's the US card. It's probably appearing on screen. Which is 2 cost, gain a credit slot. This is also a standard card. It's basically the War Machine, but better. But you only gain a credit, not a credit slot. And that's the key. So the key here is this is only giving you credits, so it is giving you credit cheap, but it's a one-shot credit boost. But that one-shot credit boost can be very, very good. So in effect, this allows you to get the early play on it. I would expect to see people using this for a while, particularly, as I say, as long as there are good targets out there for it, it'll see play, because it's kind of inoffensive, cheap order to include in your deck that has function. Right. Next up, we have Kika. Yeah, this is going to be controversial. So there are many people who are going to be happy to see Kika back in the game. So Kika is a 7-cost, 3-op cost blitz fighter that's 6/5. It's an elite, so it's very expensive. Like 10 credits for 6 damage. However, it's a big body, and the key to this is when Kika is destroyed, it gets destruction. Shuffle 4 Kamikaze cards into your deck. Right. Kamikaze is 1 cost, deal 1 damage to the enemy HQ and draw a card. It's a whole thing. This is an incredibly potent burn tool. Kamikaze, anything that can create Kamikaze is always going to be a strong burn tool. I have been on record as saying I don't like the mechanic. My opinion has not changed. I don't like Kamikaze as a card. I don't object to Kika as a card. Kamikaze as a card, I'm not a fan of. I don't like this cantripping 1 damage to HQ. It's so good, and if it becomes proliferate, it creates very, very, very irritating burn decks that can draw. And that's just, if you can load it right, incredibly powerful. So you're definitely going to see this. This is definitely going to see play, because it is very, very good in any deck that wants to destroy your HQ, which is basically any deck. Yes, it's expensive and slow, but this is a very good late-game tool for any Japan main deck. Speaking of good tools for Japan decks, Scouting Party's back. So this is the 3-cost order that is add 2 33rd Recon to the board. Love this card. I've been on record as saying that I think this card is great. This card has been a staple in Japan for a very long time. It is also an Intel card, so it's great for Japan, Poland Legions, which we might see some more of. We have got Intel cards coming back. We're going to get to another one in a minute. But adding 2 33rd Recon is never bad, so it's 3 cost, and in effect, as a special, you're going to get 2 copies of the 33rd Recon, which is the 1/2 that, when it takes damage, draws you a card. It's never bad. This is just a very good staple card. I like to see it. I think it's good Japan draw that isn't expansion, and that's a positive thing to have back. And it also leans Japan into slightly slower, kind of heavier play, which is never a bad thing either. Next up, we've got redeployment. So redeployment is the 4-cost limited order that has Intel 2, and it says shuffle all cards in your hand into your deck and then draw that many cards +1. This card is great in any deck that A likes Intel and B wants draw. This is another really good draw tool. 4-cost, draw, hand +1, in effect. It lets you get rid of a bunch of cards that you don't want, shovel them back into your deck, you're not discarding them, and then put them through. It's effectively mulligan on a stick. Expect to see this see play. This would certainly be something that you would include in any Japan Intel deck. Again, Japan Poland Legions would probably play this. Next up, we have yet more draw. This is Edge of the Empire. This is the 2-cost standard order that's returning. It says shuffle your hand into your deck and draw 3 cards at the end of your turn. So this is like Redeployment Light. It is cheaper, substantially, at half the cost. You pitch your hand and then draw 3 at the end of your turn. So it's not as quick, it's not as good late game when you've got spare credits, but if you are blanked out early, if your deck bricks you, this is a great way of cycling. So with deck cycling tools like this, we're also liable to see Japan used for decks that want to find specific cards. So I think that's going to be interesting. There's going to be people who definitely play with that as an idea. So overall, we're definitely seeing a lean into giving Japan some more draw tools, which I think is a positive thing. I'm glad that they're getting more draw tools. Kika coming back, as I say, not the world's biggest fan, but hey, let's move down to the Soviets. So the elite for the Soviets is Red Banner. So this is 2-cost order, and it is destroy a friendly unit, add a random unit from the same nation that costs 2 more. So this is really strong. If you play it on the right card, this is really, really strong. There are plenty of ways to target this, and that's the key. This is targetable, so you can control what you want to get out of this. You can look and make sure that you have a unit that you can destroy. Obviously, the classic example of this is going to be trying to destroy something when the only thing that it can spawn, like it can only spawn one target. So the classic example is finding like a card that when you play it, you can only get one. So this is not as targetable as the tank version, which is important, because Upgrade is the tank version, but that is destroy target tank at a tank. This is friendly unit, which makes it much less directly targetable. It's not as controllable, but you are getting good value, and obviously this is great for recycling a unit that has already done its job or taken some damage. Certainly, this is going to be a card that we'll see play. It's also very cheap at 2. Next up, we have Order 227. This is the Soviet Special Order. It's 2-cost, and it is give your damaged Soviet units +2 attack and fully repair them. If it's not immediately apparent what this is for, you probably haven't seen self-damage. This is a very, very strong card for self-damage. Self-damage took a hit recently because it lost one of its big win conditions, because you couldn't kind of blitz out using stand together, which went away. So now you get this, which is not quite as good, but is still very, very strong. Fully repairing all of your damaged Soviet units and giving them +2 attack is pretty good. I certainly expect to see this in play in Soviet self-damage. Next up, we have Stand Fast. This is another Soviet order. Note the Soviets, by the way, are getting all orders. No units coming back for the Soviet Union. So this is a 3-cost order. It's limited, and it says give target infantry or tank unit +5/+5 and +5 operation cost. Obviously, there are going to be people who cook with this, because +5/+5 is huge. But +5 operation cost can be crippling, unless you can find a way to operate it for less, or fight with it, or do something with it that makes it very, very strong. There are options out there, but this is the kind of card that is basically going to get used by people who want to cook. and particularly want to cook. These might get used by some people trying to cook some OTK decks. I don't necessarily think it's going to see a tremendous amount of play, although it's not the worst late game tool if you're really late into the game and you just need a big unit, but suppression and removal are a thing, so it's not super strong. Next up, a card which I think will see a lot of play is Ural Factories. So this is a 2-cost standard order. Destroy a friendly unit, add a random unit from the same nation that costs 1 more. Like Red Banner Light. But not that light. This is really good. If you are wanting to just go hard, and kind of take damage on units and trade out and then be able to get value on it. Obviously, the value on this is when you've used a unit, traded it out, and then you can put a new unit on the board. If the new unit that you put on the board has Blitz, of course, it can operate. That's not nothing either. And that unit costs 1 more. You're definitely going to see people use this in decks that are disposable units. We'll see how meta it becomes, because I think it's going to depend on where we lean, and we have a lot of changes coming in this rotation. So, we'll see. But Soviets are getting some very good orders, in my opinion. Right, what about the good old US of A? So, the US of A gets an elite order. It gets the 9-cost Seaborne Invasion. All enemy units in the front line retreat, add 2 US infantry units there with a total attack of 6. There's a lot to unpack here. This is a big tempo change card in principle, because obviously you push back enemy units from the front line, which can also retreat them to hand. Note, if they can't go into the support line, they go back into your opponent's hand. If they can't go back into your opponent's hand, they are discarded. So it is quite strong, but it's very expensive, and 2 US infantry units with a total attack of 6. I mean, so this is where you get into the Finnick. That is quite random. It's not... It's going to be, like, I don't know, it's most likely going to be statistically 2-3 attack units, because the US doesn't have a fat pile of 4 attack infantry currently. It has a couple, but it's a big pool. So it is quite random, and you could get some good stuff or you could get some terrible stuff. But that's kind of not the point here. The point here is that you are going to get good positional advantage by being able to get the tempo of pushing your opponent back and having something in the front line with some attack score. You're kind of hoping you can roll something that has Blitz, but your odds aren't great. US doesn't have a lot of Blitz infantry. That's certainly not... I mean, your perfect roll on this, I suppose, is to deploy this, push your opponent back, and get, like, 2 first Marines, sorry, which are the 3-4 Blitz. Because then for 11 credits, you can push everything back and then attack for a total value of 6 with something over defense. But, I mean, that's very high roll. The random element is not nothing, as I've always said, but it's not a terrible elite. It really isn't, as a tempo card. It's just, I think, a bit overpriced for me. I honestly think this could do with being a bit cheaper. I'm sure plenty of people will flame me in the comments for that, but I think for this to be actually regularly played, it would need to be cheaper by 1 or 2 credits. Next up, a card which I don't think needs any help to be played, is the 109th Combat Engineers. So this got discussed in a recent video with me and Jaking, actually, about cards history. This is a 1k 1-2 infantry that no one cares about, because it's a special infantry that you're never attacking with. Because it has smokescreen, as long as it's on the board, it says when a friendly unit moves into the front line, give it +1 attack. Welcome to a frontline card that everybody loves. This is just a US frontline staple, and if US frontline, like, mid-range comes back, this will continue to be a staple in that deck. It's really, really good. It's also not half bad for Japan-US or US-Japan hyper-aggro. this is really, really strong. It will see play. Next up, we have Carrier Cover. This is the limited card, so this is a 1-cost order, and it says choose one. Your fighters get +1/+1, or are moved into the front line if possible. Now, this is really interesting to me, because if we can dig enough stuff into it, this might actually be a card that makes the US back to being even remotely appealing as an ally for Brit Air. And that, to me, is always interesting. It is fighters only, so it doesn't target bombers, which is very particular, which is actually a major weakness for this card, because fighters are less desirable than bombers in general. But it's definitely worth keeping an eye on. Do I think it's going to be a major meta card? Probably not. I think there are better air allies out there and better buffs out there. But it does hit all your fighters, so if you can get a small pile of fighters on the board, suddenly it becomes a lot better. So keep your eyes open for anything that spawns a lot of fighters. Finally, a standard card, which you're definitely going to see lots of, I suspect, is the 32nd Infantry. It's the Choco Boys. So for those who are not familiar with this card, this is a much older card that is coming back. It is a 1-cost, 1-operation cost, 2/1 infantry, which is decent. But it also has deployment. Draw a 32nd Infantry Regiment from your deck. This is deck thinning on a stick, by which I mean ways to make your deck smaller. Every time you play one of these, it draws one of itself from the thing. This is a great card, especially for newer players, because it gives you filler that does something useful. I think it's great to have this back. I think this is going to be really good for newer players, and I certainly think we'll see it see some play. I've been looking forward to being able to play with this card as well, because I like deck thinning. I think it can be very, very useful. And it's a decent unit. That's it. I mean, those are the cards that are returning. So the next part of the conversation, of course, is the cards that are leaving. And in this case, we're going to go nation by nation. I am kind of blitzing through this because I'm on limited recording time, but we're going to see how we go. Right, cards that are leaving us from Britain. Right, so prepare for some sadness. Many Britain players of many different flavours are going to be sad. These are, by the way, some very impactful rotations. So Long Range Desert Group is going. So this is a big hit to Commandos decks. So this is a 5-cost order that says your units get when this unit deals damage to a unit, destroy it. It's the elite. It's gone. It's a very good elite that was seeing play. Commandos don't like losing that. That's probably the biggest use case of this. Sincerely Yours is going. This is the 4-cost, your HQ gains +6 defense and you draw 2 cards elite. This is just a Brit staple that's gone. This hits a huge number of Britain decks. Next, we get to some foreshadowing. So this is the 85 Pioneer Company. This is one of the 1-cost 0/4s that have been in the game, I believe, since the very beginning. They are the 0/4 smokescreens that have a passive effect that is kind of defining for your nation. In this case, it's been changed over the years, but they currently is the first order you play each turn costs 1 less credit. It's gone. It is foreshadowing. They are all gone. We will hit them as we go. And these are very impactful because they are removing what have been staples of a nation. So it's definitely got impact. Partnership. Okay, this probably isn't that impactful. This is the special card, 6-cost, add a random US elite unit to your support line. I don't think I've ever really seen this played. It just doesn't happen, so we're going to move on. Night Raid, this does get played a lot. So Commandos, getting a rip from this. 4-cost, copy a random order from the enemy deck and add number 10 to Commandos to your support line. Number 10, of course, is the commando unit that does the ping of damage to a random enemy when you play an order. That's a hit for the Commandos deck. It's not the last one. Speaking of, it's not the first, it's not the last, and speaking of, we get to the Crusader Mark II. This is also a big hit to the Commandos deck. This is seen at least as a one-of in many Commandos decks at the moment. The 3-cost, 1-op cost 2/3 tank that says when you give a British order, draw a card. It's a special and it's gone. That is, again, another impactful hit. Refit, Spitfire related. Spitfires aren't really a thing, so I don't think anyone's going to notice. RAF Mitchell, the 6-cost, 3-up cost bomber with salvage, well guarded. Again, nobody plays it, not going to notice. If I am going quickly, it's because I don't want to dwell on cards that they're going and they will probably be changed and brought back in a better format. Escort Group. I have seen this see a little bit more play in Britain's slower decks now to try and get armaments to do some damage, but it's not super heavily played. Ingenuity, this is developer British or US bomber, kind of with Bomber Mafia and Production Order, just wasn't massively used, and now it's gone. I don't think it's going to be a big miss. Number 1 Commando. I occasionally saw this used. It's kind of the Death Touch Smokescreen Commando unit. It's the 1/3 that has units dealt combat damage by this unit are destroyed. It's a limited. Kind of a hit, but not a massive one. Again, not seeing a huge amount of play. Right, back to Commandos decks getting hit hard. Resourcefulness. This is the 1-cost Intel 1 limited card that says draw a random commando unit from your deck. Another huge hit to the Commandos deck. Surprising me not that much, given how well Commandos has started being played recently. Then we have the Glamour Boys. This is a card that many people will not be sad to see go away. This card has been changed from being quite oppressive to being slightly less oppressive. It's still really, really strong, and I don't think anyone is going to lament its passing. This is the 5-cost, 1-op cost, 3/6 guard that has deployment, give your HQ plus 4 defense as a standard card, and many people don't like this card. And I think it's nice to see it hitting the bench for a while. Just take a breather. Next up we have Airdrop, which I'm kind of sad to see go, if only because I've liked playing around with it, but frankly we're not going to dwell on it because it's not a very good card. I just like playing around with it because paratroopers. Blenheim Mark IV. Anyway, moving on. For much the same reason. Welch Regiment. Moving on, for the same reason. 2-pounder. I will stop briefly on this, because this is a 0-op cost artillery, which you could do some fun things with, but it still wasn't heavily played. Bomber Run. I've occasionally seen this used, but not very often. This is the 2-cost standard order that's deal 2 damage to a target unit, 5 damage instead if you control a bomber with 5 or more attack. It's kind of okay, but it wasn't seeing a lot of play, so I don't think it's a big miss. Close Call. Counter an order or deployment effect that targets a friendly unit. 2-cost standard card. This countermeasure had seen some play, but not a lot, because Britain wasn't really using countermeasures, but it's there. But overall, the big hits here are 2 super staple cards in Sincerely Yours and the Pioneers, and then basically Commandos getting slapped about the face and neck for existing. On to Germany. Right, the Panzer, the Grenadier brothers are gone. So this is the 119 and 35 Grenadier. This is the Super Grenadier combo that both veteran into ridiculous units as long as you have both of them under control. So if you can deploy them both, they turn into this massive, constantly wheeling engine of ridiculousness, and that's the only time they're actually useful. It was kind of fun, but it was never very good. On the other hand, then we have 158 Nakshub, which is, or rather was now after rotation, insanely good and is now gone. So this is the German 04. Like I say, the 04 smoke screens are all going. This is the one that is you gain 2 credits for the first enemy unit destroyed during your turn. This was an absolute staple in basically any German deck and is incredibly strong. Bypass. I would bypass this because it doesn't see a lot of play. However, people do every now and then try and cook with it, so some people may lament it. A card that is going to be noticed is the removal of the Zestorer. Now, the Zestorer, this is the 4-cost 4/4 fighter that is 0-op cost. It's a special, and its operation cost increases by 1 each time this unit attacks. This is an I've talked about how strong this card is. It is an absolute menace if you play it well, so it disappearing is pretty strong. It's a pretty heavy hit. It's definitely a played card. On to definitely played cards. Missing. This is a German countermeasure that is being rotated. So not only is 2 cost when a unit moves into the front line, destroy it, frankly, not the worst countermeasure that you could ever include in your deck. This card has been tremendously important recently because with the advent of Aufklärung, we've seen a lot of countermeasures being played, and a lot of the very good value countermeasures being able to pull an extra one from your Aufklärung. This is not a bad take from Aufklärung, so that's going to be a thing. Definitely impactful, was definitely seeing play. Moving on to its fellow, even more impactful, that saw even more play, we have the 1 cost countermeasure, Stranglehold. When a unit is deployed, the enemy loses remaining credits. This is such a hit. This is one of the countermeasures that you wanted to include in your deck and see. J. King and I have both talked about how insanely strong this card is if it's used well. It might be the strongest countermeasure in the game if used well, because it can absolutely destroy your opponent's game. Next up we have the Heinkel HE219. Wasn't seeing play, honestly. MEBF 110E wasn't seeing play at high levels, but is a card that I have recommended occasionally to newer players because it does have deployment, gets blitz if you control the front line. Can be good in the early game, but honestly isn't a big miss. Pummel, really didn't see a lot of play, so not a massive issue. It's seen some suppression removal gone from Germany, but Germany's got suppression, so it's fine. Next up we have Sudden Strike. This was seeing a lot of play. This was always going to see a lot of play. This is the 2 costs limited order that is destroy a unit that costs 2 credits or less. This was definitely played regularly. This was definitely a used German removal tool. Is going to have an impact. Speaking of is going to have an impact, goodbye to the KFC truck. So this is the SD KFC 222. It's the 1/1 Blitz tank that is 1 cost, 1 op cost. It's limited and it says adjacent ground units have +1 attack. This was used quite a lot in German tanks decks, in particular to just give extra punch on a finishing turn. So it is an impactful loss. It was also a card that you didn't object to seeing off Blitz Doctrine. Next up, Focused Attack. Right, moving on. Just wasn't seeing play. It was never very good. Far too expensive. The 81 Infantry. Yeah, just moving on. H39 SWG. The swag is gone. This card has been not played at all and or played to the point of everyone hating it since its addition to the game, so I don't think anyone's going to particularly object to seeing it go away. It is frankly still quite silly, just a lot more expensive than it used to be. No one's going to be sad to see this go. Alright, some people might be, but I'm not. Next up, Jagd Panther. This is just a tank option from Blitz Doctrine that's gone. It's the 5/3 4-cost ambush tank. It's not that great, but it's valid. Momentum. This is the 4-cost order that adds 2 Panzer 1Bs to the front line if it's not enemy controlled. This is interesting because Panzer 1B and things has always been a little bit problematic for newer players, because the Panzer 1B is the tank that when it attacks the enemy HQ becomes a veteran. When it becomes a veteran, you add a non-veteran version to your hand, so it's technically infinite cycling so long as you can keep attacking enemy HQ with them. Next up, we have the 3.7cm Flak 37. This is the 2-cost 0-op, cost 1/2 Blitz tank. That's standard. I actually quite liked this card. This was a pretty good pull if you got it from early Blitz Doctrine, because if you waited until you could get Contest Doctrine down, then this drops as a 2/3 that is 0-op cost with Blitz, which is really strong. Which is probably why it's gone, because 0-op cost is always potent. Then we've got the Henschel HS-126. So this is the 1-2 fighter, 2 cost, 1 op cost, that says give friendly tank +1/+1 for each non-tank unit type in the same line, whether that be support line or front line. This did see some play in decks that just kind of wanted to combo out big tanks, like buff something for a big hit, but it wasn't amazing. But it is impactful. There are people who like it. Speaking of impactful and people who like it, Spoils of War. This is the 2-cost order that says choose and draw a card from the top 3 of your deck, put the rest on the bottom of the deck. This is incredible deck control. This card was way better than I think a lot of people realised, and it still saw a lot of play anyway. It gives you a lot of deck control, so that's kind of a hit. Not so much a hit. Support column. Adjacent ground units are +1 attack and operate for 1 less. There's something you might give to a unit occasionally, but there are just better ways of doing it. It's never been that heavily played that I have known. That's Germany. Again, quite a few impactful hits. Next up, Japan. Right. The A6M221-0 is gone. This is the elite card that says the first card played by the enemy each turn costs double. It's a 6-cost, 2-op cost, 4/3 fighter, so you don't really want to do much with it. But that effect, while it's on the board, is really strong. It's a very powerful tempo tool, which is gone. So quite impactful. On the Ascent, this is another incredibly strong tool, very heavily played, very, very game-winning if you know how to use it well. This is the 3-cost elite order that is destroy and salvage the units with the least attack on the battlefield, so that can be a lot, and you salvage copies of them. Has been one of the most appreciably strong tempo tools in the game, so that's a big hit. Also a big hit, endlessly going to be a big hit, and going to make my friend Redson very sad, is the 1st Signal Regiment. So this is the Japan 04 smokescreen. This is the one that is when another friendly unit is destroyed, deal 1 damage to the enemy HQ. Basically turns all of your units into burn when they're destroyed, which is very, very potent and has been one of the most impactful tools that is least noticed a lot of the time in aggro Japan decks for years. Then we've got 66th Independent. We ignore it. I'm just moving past ones that weren't really seeing play. A6M3 Zeke, same deal. It's nice if you want to countermeasures, but wasn't seeing that much play. And we have more important fish to fry with Japan's big rotations. Speaking of which, say goodbye to the 3rd Yokosuka. This is the 1-cost, 0-op cost, 1/1 Blitz Infantry. That is a special that has +1 attack for each adjacent Japanese unit. This card is insanely good. It has been a staple in Japan aggro decks forever and a day, since it's been in the game, as far as I'm aware. Forced Surrender. This is the 1-cost Japan order that says pin target enemy unit, and enemy units currently pinned remain pinned for 1 extra turn. This special order was very, very strong if you knew how to use it well, and this is a huge hit to that archetype. That kind of pin deck archetype will notice this not being around. The Type 3 Chinu, I'm kind of going to ignore it. It wasn't really relevant for many reasons. The 28cm Coastal Howitzer, however, was occasionally played as just a strong body. But it's the 3-cost, 3-op cost, 4/3 artillery that can't attack the enemy HQ. Did occasionally see play, but not a huge amount. Then we've got 3rd Maizuru, the SNLF. They are gone. This is the Japan Alpine unit that really wasn't seeing play. Next up, we have the B7A2 Ryusei. Again, it's a blitz bomber that can't attack the enemy HQ. It wasn't really seeing play, except in very fringe Japan air attempts. 118th Mixed did see some play in salvage decks. This is the 1-cost, 1-op cost, 2/1 infantry, limited infantry that has blitz and salvage. Could be quite good. Then we've got the 1st Taipei Regiment, which is the 5-cost bird. It really only saw play in burn decks, but it's the 5-cost 0-op cost 3/3 Blitz with Fury that has destruction, deal damage to the enemy HQ, does 2 damage, not a big hit. Same is true of the 54th Infantry Regiment, which just wasn't seeing play. For those who don't like the big high-roll OTK decks, the removal of Saruga Regiment will probably not hurt you. I'm kind of sad to see it go, because this thing was fun to build around. This is the 4-cost 1-op cost 2/4 Infantry, whose big deal was that, as a standard card, it had destruction, deal damage to the enemy HQ equal to this unit's attack value, so you drop it on the board, buff the life out of it, and then destroy it, and basically OTK your opponent. It was kind of fun to build around, if that was your kind of deck. And if you liked building like big kind of complex engines that popped out an OTK, this is probably a card you're sad to see the end of. But it probably frustrated a lot of people too. Last 4 from Japan, we have the Toyama Regiment. I'm going to ignore it because it wasn't played. We have Underfire. This is the other big hit to the pin archetype. So Underfire is the 3-cost standard order that says deal 1 damage to target unit and to adjacent units, and you pin units damaged. This was absolutely critical to pin decks. Next up, we've got the 2/1, 3/1 Blitz Infantry, the 24th Cavalry, which is a regiment that I have recommended to new players endlessly because it is the regiment that has destruction. Draw a 24th Cavalry regiment from your deck. So we're actually seeing the US deck thinning come back and the Japan deck thinning leave. Finally, we have Diversion, which just isn't relevant, really. You could give something Smokescreen. I mean, people were playing around with it a bit, but it wasn't that great. But it is a Smokescreen hit, kind of. So that's Japan. Next on our list, of course, is the Soviet Union. Yet more big hits. Right. Depths of Winter. This is the 5-cost elite order that is remove all units from the battlefield and replace them with light infantry. This is one of the most potent Soviet board clears in the game. It's not really a board clear, but it kind of is, because it's played right. It's just incredibly strong. Definitely a hit to Soviet control decks. Beriev BE4 is a hit specifically to anyone who liked playing with Beriev. Yeah, that's kind of it. The 329th Engineers, this is the Soviet 0-4 Smokescreen. This is the one that when a unit's destroyed, your HQ gains +2 defense. Again, this is a big hit to Soviet control decks, because this is one of the big HQ defense gains. I'm going to take a moment to celebrate the fact that a move that I have been advocating for quite some time has finally happened. Push is gone. It has been rotated, and I sincerely hope we never see it again in its current form, because I don't like this card. I have never liked this card. As a design, like, it's fine, you can play it. I've played some push decks, because that's what you do. You test decks and look at them, but realistically, this card was just annoying as design, and I'm glad to see it gone, as I suspect many others will be. We have the 175th Motorized. So this is weird, because I had seen this occasionally in Soviet tank decks, but I'm not going to dwell on it because it's not relevant. And we're going to hop onto a card which is a bit more notable because of other cards that are going at the same time. So the 67th Baranovici is gone. This is one of those decks that was a big part of the tokens, which is the light infantry creating Soviet deck, because this gave all of your token, like light infantry tokens, Alpine, which meant that when another one was deployed, they gained bonuses. This is relevant because tokens is kind of getting absolutely destroyed. It's not even kind of, it's basically being removed from the game as an archetype in this rotation. Petlyarkov PE2 we're just going to bypass because, no one played it. Enemy at the Gates did occasionally see play because it used well, it could be quite good fun. This is the limited 4-cost order that is all units get +2 attack and are dealt 2 damage. LA5, this is the 4/5 fighter that is 4-cost 2-op cost, which occasionally did see play as just a big body in Sauvaire. If for some reason you were going Sauve main, you'd consider this. Then we've got the T60. This is the 4-cost 2/4 guard tank that says destruction, add a T-34 1942 to your hand, that really wasn't being played by anyone, so we can ignore it. Then we got the 252nd rifles. Yeah, some self-damage attempts were used with this, but not really very often, so I don't think it's a big miss. It's certainly not a self-damage tool that self-damage is going to overly regret seeing the end of. Deep Operation, this is part of the aforementioned gutting of tokens. So this is the 2-cost order that's add 2 light infantry to your hand and give all such units blitz. Key card in tokens, and it's gone. It's a limited, by the way. Another limited card that's gone is Snowstorm. This is the 1-cost order that is all units have an operation cost of 4 until the start of your next turn. This was very important in slower Sov control and delay decks, or decks that used Soviet ally for that reason. It also was part of some OTK decks. Any OTK deck that used Soviets considered this, because it could just buy you time. So, it's a thing. Leonardo DiCaprio's off. Yeah, kind of done. But their 14th guards are gone. 334th Mountain Rifles are gone. Also, just going to bypass, no one was playing it. To arrive at Frontal Assault. This is the 2-cost standard order that's give your light infantry units +1/+2. If you have none, add 2 to your hand. Critical card to the light infantry deck, which is dead. If you weren't sure that light infantry was dead, we're also getting rid of line of engagement, which is the other key light infantry card. This is the 2-cost order that is add 2 light infantry units to the battlefield, 1 in the front line if possible as a standard card. Basically, at this point, tokens is dead. To be clear, there is just the light infantry production deck is just gone now. There just aren't tools for it. Next up, we have the 149th, I think it is, infantry, which is the one that gets +1/+2 if you control 3 or more units. Kind of relevant only to early game, but was good in early game. If you're a newer player, it's kind of sad that you can't use this, because it could be pretty decent. Then we've got the 321st Rifle Regiment. This is the 1-cost 1-op cost 1/2 Blitz Infantry, the standard card that has destruction, add light infantry to the support line, just to really throw some extra dirt on the grave of light infantry. Speaking of throwing dirt on the grave, if you wanted to make sure that push really was gone as an archetype, Red Dawn's gone too. This is a big hit. So, Red Dawn is the 1-cost Soviet order that gives you, it's a standard, and it gives you choose 1, deal 3 damage to a unit in your HQ, or add from the people to your hand so that you can use removal later in the game. This is actually quite a big hit for a lot of Soviet decks, because this card was quite useful and ubiquitously strong. Granted, its biggest use was in push OTK, but it was also quite useful for any Soviet deck that could gain HQ defense. Overall, big hits for Soviets to control and the death knell of light infantry, plus, hooray, the removal of push. Finally, we have the US of A from the main nations. Don't worry, we will get to the allies. Right. The first elite gone is mass deployment. It was occasionally seeing use in some 3-op or ramp decks. It's not really that great. M24 Chaffee. People have been trying to make the M24 Chaffee work for years. It's never really worked that well. And now it's gone, and will hopefully be reworked before it comes back into something useful. The 593rd Jasko. This is the US 04 smokescreen, which is damage dealt to your HQ is reduced by 1. Like all of the smokescreen units, this is a hit. This is just the smallest of them, because this has always been, frankly, the crappiest of these cards. 158th Bushmasters is gone. You are one of 2 people if you're watching this video. One, you don't care because you never really come across Bushmasters, or two, you're absolutely gutted now because the completely ridiculous, redundant repairing cycle Bushmasters death thing was somehow fun to you. Either way, congratulations, Bushmasters is no longer available as a special. Speaking of no longer available specials, the 442nd Infantry's gone. This is the 4-3 Infantry with Ambush. It's 3 cost and it says Destruction. If it's the enemy turn, add a copy to your hand, which occasionally saw some play, but not really. Industrial Might. Weirdly, the only deck that has ever really cared about this was tokens. It was occasionally used in tokens decks for draw, because it's draw a card for every unit you've deployed this turn as a deployed or added this turn as a special, and it's only 2 cost, but it's just an extra nail in the tokens coffin. Coffee. You can tell it's morning. Right. Big change. So, production order. This is the 1 cost special order that is choose one, add a B-24D or a B-24J to your hand. So the B-24D is the big 6-4 Blitz bomber, and the B-24J is the bomber that you deploy and has basically AoE suppress. This is a big hit for 2 reasons, and something I want to stand out in this video. Because production order is being rotated, and production order is the card, the only card that directly creates B-24D and J, B-24D and J will no longer spawn from Bomber Mafia, which also could spawn them. Now, I've said endlessly that shouldn't be the case. They should only be available from production order because it was getting oppressive and you could see too many of them. Gone a step further. QDOS 1939. Just remove the card. It was making ramp far too strong. It's gone. I am not sad to see it gone. But anyway, that's just a PSA. Be aware that this means that B-24D and J are no longer in the bomber pool once this rotation goes live. Strafing. This is 1 cost special order that is either destroy a target artillery or pin all units in the front line. Saw occasional play, but not really very much. B-24 Liberator. It's a big bomber. 6-0 Infantry. So yeah, I'm just going to move on. This is what is this, the 60th? Sorry, I said 6-0. It is the 60th. The Americans might call me out in one direction or the other. If you're service personnel, it'd be nice if you let me know if your service personnel need. Is it still 6-0 or 60th? I know it's been both over the years. Anyway, random war crap that no one cares about. This unit was a part of the repair mechanic thing, and it never really worked, so no one cares. 8th Marines. This is another just very rarely used card. Naval Bombardment, another rarely used card. The P-39 Air Cobra, also a rarely used card. Getting a theme here. 12th Infantry, also rarely used in weird decks that were trying to do something crazy with massive unit ramp but never worked. 75th Rangers. Yep, same deal. Another unit that was rarely used. The theme is there. Battle Valor. This is an order that just wasn't used. 11th Infantry. This is another repair card that's gone. Sensing a theme, that is repair disappearing. The Regulars. Yet another repair-focused card gone. We're bypassing a lot here, and we'll get to that in a minute. Then we've got 17th Infantry. This was actually pretty decent for newer players, so that's kind of a thing. 463rd Battalion. I occasionally saw it see play, but not really. And Grim Day, which also didn't see much play. So the US theme here is a couple of specific hits. Obviously, the 0-4's gone. Production order is by far the biggest takeaway from this. The removal of production order is huge, and everything else is just tidying up. And that's okay by me. I would have maybe liked to have seen a little more tapering of ramp. some of the actual ramp tools being rotated wouldn't have made me sad. But I do think that it's quite sensible, given that US has not been a massively heavily played main nation, not to overly monkey with it. We're just removing a lot of basically chaff. Sorry, Chaffy. God, that was a cheap pun, but there you go. Anyway, we're now going to move on to allied nations, because there are some allied rotations as well. Right. They are quite targeted. France gets hit hard. We lose Phony War, which is the special card that is both players draw until they have 8 cards in hand, because this just was a mill killing tool. I'm glad to see it gone. It is a little sad for 3-op, because it is denying 3-op one of its best draw tools. Then both the 43rd and 73rd Regiment are gone. This is in line with something I've been talking about for a while. 1939 have not hidden the fact that they are kind of fading, mobilise away, hopefully to be reworked at some point, so they're just gone on principle. Fiat CR32, this is just a card that wasn't seeing a lot of play, but could be used in some really stupid combos with Bushmasters. 6th Alpini, this is just a big fat Italy guard that it's nice to see a break of, but it wasn't super seeing play. Spitfire Mark 6 Polish is gone. This is a card that wasn't seen play, and also was part of an archetype that I think, in the form of Spitfires, needs to go away, be reworked, and come back. And then we got the 78th Steel Regiment, which really was just... It was a weird, funky card that, again, I think needs a rework from Poland. That's it. That's the rotation. Overall, Bear's views on the rotation. I'm pretty happy with this rotation. I think it's hit the things it needed to hit. I think it's shown that the 1939 aren't afraid to hit certain nations harder than others, which is good. And also that they aren't afraid to leave some nations that need time to breathe into some more archetypes. USA, we're looking at you, to get away from, to play anything other than ramp. I think it's nice to see that too, so hopefully we'll see a bit more 3-up and some frontline coming back. We might see some good US mid-range. Overall, I think this is a very solid balance patch. Kudos 1939 for they did the rotation rather. Balance patch hasn't come out yet. I will cover that when it comes out too. But as a rotation, I think this is pretty decent. I have no major complaints, and I think many people will be celebrating a few of the changes in here. But let me know what you think. Comments down below. Obviously join the Discord, you can talk to me there. And as always, I hope it's been useful. If you can support the channel in any way, please use the links down below. It does make a huge difference. But as always, stay well, be good humans, and I'll catch you next time.